Well, the comic book shop Castle Perilous is celebrating the eclipse with a booth at SalukiCon this weekend. Yesterday, the owner let us in on some art belonging to one of the original illustrators of the game's Dungeons and Dragons. That is cool. Check this out. This is original artwork belonging to the late artist David Trampier. Now, owner Scott Thorne met him after Trampier says that he lost his job as a taxi driver in late 2013. Well, then Thorne bought his artwork and found Trampier wanted to get back into the gaming world.
We had arranged to book him into one of the local gaming conventions, and he was going to make an appearance there. And he went into the hospital, apparently cancer. Tried getting a hold of him for the convention. I wasn't getting any response. Finally, I got a hold of his wife and said, oh, yeah, he passed away.
Well, Trampier disappeared in the 80s with the last installment of his comic book Wormy, published in April of 1988. Now, he reappeared in Carbondale in 2002 and then died in 2014, 3 weeks before that convention. D&D fans can see Trampier's original work, including Wormy, at Castle Perilous in Carbondale.
Well, hello and welcome to the Cellar. I don't know how it is where you are, but it's still damn cold here. And it's not seasonal. In fact, I have an alarm on my phone for 4:20 in the afternoon every Thursday. Remind me that I'm making a video tonight, because one time I forgot. And my wife heard it go up and she goes, oh yeah, another video. Man, those weeks go by fast. I wish winter would, and I gotta agree. It has been cold here, and snowy, and very unseasonal. And I know it's worse in other places. So, hope you're warm when you're listening to this. Hello, Tim. I visited Carbondale a few months back to see some of Tramp's work. I was not able to visit his final resting place. Perhaps the location is not public information, but I would like to pay my respects one day if possible. If he is still without a monument, I'd like to fundraise for that as well. Well, I don't know exactly where Tramp's buried either, but I might have a friend who does. And I'm going to see that friend at GaryCon, and if I remember, I'm going to ask him if he knows. A monument, huh? I don't know. That would probably tickle the shit out of Tramp. Do a Wormy, or better yet, Wormy's little buddy. What should we expect from a $50 book of monsters? Hi, Tim. What, in your opinion, should be the bare minimum of information and qualities of usability in a book of monsters for fantasy tabletop RPG? Long sentence. It's a tough one for me to answer because everybody looks at a book with different expectations, looking for something different. Whether it's stuff to borrow, lift, if it's something they want inspiration from, it might amuse you. Now, I've never ever bought anybody else's book of monsters or anything like that. I have lived out of the first edition Monster Manual, my imagination, all the books I've read, and I've been mostly able to make up whatever I wanted at the time. Now, I know that that's not possible for everybody that's watching this. I'm not trying to brag. I'm just, I'm a creative guy and I can do it. I've been doing it for a long time now. I would think that the value one could derive from a purchase of $50 for a monster manual would be either how many monsters in there you can add into your own campaign, or what kind of ideas does it spur in you. Now, you might find it interesting that Greyhawk never had more than 3 or 4 different kinds of monsters as regulars, cast members, so to speak, and just the occasional super bad guy. And Gary ran a great game for a long time, and people enjoyed it very well. I don't use a lot of different stuff. I'm not trying to trick the players that are playing in my games with stuff they've never seen before. And the occasional second tier or even third tier type bad guy monster. Bad guy doesn't necessarily mean they're capable of rational thought. Might just be a ravening beast. But what should be in it? If you look through it and you say, yeah, this is $50 worth of stuff, then that ought to do it. Beyond that, I really can't look into the heads of every gamer and see why they buy supplemental books. Okay, I'm not that capable or gifted. I watched the whole episode hoping to hear of any insider info on new Forgotten Realms movies or series. Any help from your investigations? Yeah, okay, the Thief movie was Forgotten Realms set in. I doubt it. Honor Among Thieves did not do nearly as well as people were predicting or hoping. It didn't lose money, but it didn't take the theaters by storm. Now, maybe now that it's on some streaming services, it'll pick up, but the money's already made. And as we all know, Hollywood doesn't make films for fun, they make them for money. And I don't see it happening. I'd love to be wrong, but for it to happen, it's going to have to be a different production crew, a different director. They're going to have to sell it all over again, because I don't think the first one did well enough to just automatically spawn a sequel, or a prequel for that matter. My reading of the situation. So we know the various player types, rules lawyer. All right, various player types. Rules lawyer, min-maxer, murder hobo, rules traditionalist, power gamer, and then that guy. I've run into a few that guy over the years. My favorites. One druid tried to put a 10-minute cast spell into a ring of spell storing and turn it into an instant cast spell. Boy, that would have had some catastrophic results. And that dude would have been casting spells one-handed if he lived. 2 players tried casting Find Familiar behind walls and said that the description doesn't say you can't. Rolls eyes, seen this twice. Well, you know what? I'd let them find a familiar behind walls. A rat, a mouse, a particularly long and hairy centipede, something that was inside those walls. Because, come on, you really think that's going to work behind walls? When you're sending out an emanation, you're sending out waves, vibes, whatever, and you think it's going to work through walls? And if it did, then what? You're going to have a squirrel beat itself to death, smash its own skull in, trying to get through the walls? I wouldn't let it happen in my campaign, my world. Just because I'm a dick. Just because it really doesn't make any sense. Come on. I know there's players out there that'll try every damn thing there is that isn't specifically prohibited. And that's when the common sense of the group and the DM has to take over. Let's see, what's worse? Gets even worse when somebody said that, sure, you can do that, not knowing his own rules, and one player brought up the quote, meaning the DM can have high-level elementals. Conjure elemental uses the same working as find elementals. Dropped on you before you enter the room, now cast from above or below. The floor of the party is on. Yeah, that. No, come on. Even magic ought to have some limits, and I like to limit a lot of the magic to line of sight, visually. You have to see what you're doing. I just copy and paste the rules and wait for the inevitable I'm not going to accept, but I'll keep playing. Maybe I'm a bad DM, but for me it's fun because it gives me esoteric edge case to do some reading to see what's going on in their noggin. It's like reading an abnormal psychology and applying it in person. Anyone else like those abstruse interpretations you have to research? Well, give players credit for being enthused, involved, inventive. If they're idiots, well, yeah, that's bound to crop up at some point. Okay, next one. Long-time admirer of your work in the Dragon. I'm rereading the Dragon magazine and have a few questions. Yes, you just correctly made the distinction. When I founded it, it was the Dragon, and after I left, it got it was emasculated. Did you sell your Dragon 1 after the ad that appeared in the Dragon issue around 40? No. From the time I left until a long time ago, later, I had nothing to do with TSR, the magazine, or anything whatsoever. How much did you get for it? Well, just out of sheer, I don't know. I did finally sell a one, and it would have been back after I came back into the hobby, which would have been post-2006, and I think I got several $100s for one. They weren't quite as crazy as they were 10 years later. What did you go on to do after leaving Dragon Publishing and TSR altogether? Well, I went to Cincinnati, and with the people at Ralph Partha, we started another magazine. And it was called Adventure Gaming. And then we published 13, well, with Partha, we did 8. And then for a number of reasons, one of the principals had a snow habit. I'd been saddled with another one of the partners' wives who wanted to make fancy artsy fartsy crap. She wanted to make she wanted to make a Buick when a Chevy would have done just as well or even better. And so broke away from there, and with a couple of local people here, tried to keep going. We got through 13 issues and finally had to give up the ghost. I lost several $1,000s of my own money, and it was just no longer practical. After that, let's see, what did I do? Well, while I was still doing adventure gaming, I became a soccer coach for kids. And I did that for many years, and then I was a soccer referee, and then I was the teaching referee that worked with the younger kids that wanted to be referees. And I sold I got involved in a measuring business. We measured mainly for carpet stores. We went and measured houses and figured out pattern matches and all that kind of stuff, and then sent it back to the store and said, okay, you're going to need, these are your dimensions, you're going to need this much carpet, et cetera, et cetera. And we have measured other stuff. I once measured an entire chemical factory, every building, every room, every bench. Took me a week to do it. When I could do a whole house in 40 minutes usually. What else did I do? I sold flooring, and I went back to school, and I got a master's in education, and I taught for a while, and then I said screw it, and I retired. So I did a lot of things in there off and on. For a while I was involved with the original paintball. It was called the survival game, and it wasn't the capture the flag that you see today. Originally it was 6 Rambo types or 10 Rambo types dropped around the perimeter of a playing field, and they hunted each other. And if they got you, you had to give up your armband, and whoever was the last man lurking or had the most armbands at the end of the time period was declared the winner. We immediately said, no, we're doing capture the flag. We broke them up into teams, laid out fields with tape, and we did that for a while. We held a regional championship. We had teams from 6 or 7 different states. The only reason I got involved with that is I'd gone out to do an article about it for Adventure Gaming, and then Adventure Gaming went belly up. But I'd gotten interested and gotten to know the owners of the franchise and that. One of whom was a shady con man, and the other one was the salt of the earth great guy that I'm still friends with. And he's 86 now. That's what I did. By the way, I was flabbergasted by the way they seemed to treat you. As just a reader, I felt you deserved more than a small note in Rumbles. Made all that possible the way I see it. Thank you. I saw it too. And just doesn't... let's see. Wait a minute. I lost my place here. Most people there could not have made that magazine worthwhile even if their lives depended upon it. Well, thank you very much. Lastly, why didn't Gary try to make you stay? Gary couldn't. I'll tell you why. I read that you had a falling out with Brian Bloom. I hate that vulture, but to me it seemed like you and Gary were buddies, so it doesn't compute. Thanks for being the enlightened person you are. Thank you. That was from an admirer in Brazil. Isn't the internet wonderful? Gary couldn't do a thing. I was pushed out the door shortly after the Blooms had gained control of the majority of the stock. And even my shares weren't enough. I didn't know it at the time, but Gary had been gelded and no longer exerted any control. So that's what happened, and that's why he couldn't get me. I would have, I didn't want to leave. I got shoved out. I got handed a proposition so distasteful that it was in effect shoving me out the door because they knew I would never. So, yeah, the writing was on the wall, so to speak. All right, now this is an interesting question. What sort of hobbies did women have in the 70s if they didn't play D&D? Another question, did you and your fellow players dress up in costume in the early days? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. LARPing wasn't even an idea in the beginning. LARPing came along later. What sort of hobbies did women have? Well, I don't know. The athletes probably played softball or golf or tennis or something like that, handball, I don't know. Maybe the more sedentary indoor types knitted and crocheted and looped rugs. And not being a female, I can't really say what they all did. Needlepoint, played play bridge, cards. I don't know exactly. They didn't play. They did not play board games or participate in fantasy in the beginning. Now there were a few standout individuals, but what did they do? I don't know. Google it. Seriously, I don't know. Knitted, sewed, got drunk, did Mother's Little Helpers. Beats me. And in response to that, I am one of those rare female gamers who played back in the 80s. I was definitely the unicorn at the time. And when I walked into a gaming store, it was obvious that it was something the employees didn't see often. Over the years, our group morphed, and I got another female friend to join, to the point where our current group is like 50-50 now. Well, the players are 50-50, 3-3, and our DM is a man. The times they are changing. Yes, they are, Bobby Dylan. Yes, they are. They were few and far between. They were rare, like unicorns. They were never stared at and gawked at. They were always welcomed with, "Whoa, wow, yeah, welcome." Because those of us who were active gamers back then were delighted, especially when role-playing started taking off, delighted. And I'll say to this day, I really enjoy running a game that has females and males, or whatever, but I find that, and you can beat on me if you want, but I find that female players think along different lines that some do than male players, most male players, but not all right, nothing's an absolute. But I've often found that especially at cons, when a group is confounded and they're literally looking at each other, scratching their heads, I have found that there have been many cases when a very perceptive proposition or idea is put forth by a female at the table. I'm not gonna deny what I learned in psych and soc and all that way back. It's a fact that men and women think differently. I'm not talking about what we prefer or anything like that, but we think differently. And I'm not going out on a limb here. There's literally hundreds of studies that have tried to figure out why that is, how that is, etc. But I love having females. And I've made a habit over the years at cons of watching my players very carefully at first, see who's shy, who's bold, who is reticent to speak, and when one of them does even mumble sort of under their breath well enough for me to hear it, I will immediately go, "What was that you said?" And draw the group's attention to this brilliant idea that came out of this person, that not all guys mean to run roughshod over the females at the table, especially if they've never played with any females before. But I see it happen at cons because everybody's being very aggressive and very pushy, because they're here to have fun, my God. Reading to children at bedtime is a great thing to stimulate the imagination, just to get children interested in reading themselves. I credit my father reading The Hobbit to me at bedtime each night with stimulating my love for fantasy as well, and then leading to D&D, of course. I remember begging him for just one more chapter each night. Such a great book for children and adults too, of course. I agree. On the subject of kids' games and different genders at the gaming table, about 10 years ago, I ran a kids' game at my local game store. We had 6 players, all between the ages of 9 and 14, and evenly split. I ran The Palace of the Silver Princess by Gene Wells, which also gave me a wonderful opportunity to highlight the contributions of women in the early days. It was a fun game over several weekends. But when the group entered the wizard's bedroom, I described the kitten familiar under the bed. All the girls went, ah, and then fell in love with the little fuzzbutt. Then the familiar shape changed into a panther, and all the boys went, ah, and fell in love with the little fuzzbutt. The party had a druid, played by the youngest boy, who was asked by all the girls to talk to the familiar since his character could speak with animals. It was a lot of fun, and even though the characters loved the little NPC for different reasons, they all bonded over that shape-changing kitten. Good times. Yeah, and you know, that highlights something that good sessions of role-playing do, and that's create memories, shared memories. If you played for a long period of time with someone, and then for whatever reason went your ways for a year or 2 or 3 or 4, and then you fell back together again, it's almost inevitable that at some point, if the conversation goes on long enough, you're going to go, oh yeah, I remember that. And you're going to remember about all the little girls going, oh, and all the little boys going, oh. And you're going to have that memory. The time you got TPK'd, the time you almost got TPK'd. I have people come up and relive a TPK they got from me 10 years ago and tell me what a great time they had right up to the time they died. Even that was cool. Now, I used to be a much more bloodthirsty DM at conventions, but believe me, I've mellowed. I agree with you completely with you regarding multiplying character classes and races. I run 4 classes: Fighter, Cleric, Rogue, and Mage. Okay, I like to call them thieves. And 5 species: human, elf, dwarf, gnome, and halfling. More is not necessarily better. Absolutely agree. Absolutely agree. With nuisance monsters, ones that could be dangerous if you're stupid, but probably shouldn't be: goblins, orcs, hobgoblins. Very few different ones. Gnomes. Though in my world, gnomes have the role of fantastic metalsmiths and artificers. But you can run into some rogue gnomes. Rogue used the way it should be used. Okay, that opening just flat out rocked. Awesome pairing of monster movie and rock. Had to watch it a couple of times because I enjoyed it so much. Answered, and this is the rare occasion when I'll identify Jim Wampler, my editor. Thank you. Just a theme music for the TV show Swamp People, tempt over some crocodilian kaiju hijinks. Swamp People. Yes. Love that show. I've watched it since the very beginning. I tend to like shows that show how people do things. Fishing, alligator hunting, gold mining, timber cutting. I enjoy those. But I've especially enjoyed Swamp People. And in fact, I generally watch at least half of that night's show on my recorder, on my TiVo, before I sit down to do this. Tonight I watched the whole thing. So terribly appropriate new music. The next reply was, to the first reply, hijinks has been the byword of D&D for 50 years. cannot argue that assertion. Players are up to hijinks. The player characters are up to hijinks. It's all about magic and doing weird stuff, which is kind of hijinksy. All right, let's see what else I got going here tonight. Remember, my videos only last as long as I have comments and questions to answer. So, TSR had many female artists and some gays and trans in the 70s and early 80s in a relatively small company. You had long hairs, war protesters, people using certain banned substances. Well, I was the only one of those. Oh, yeah, I was the only one of those. Everybody else better hide it really well. I didn't give a shit. For the time and the size of the company, I'm sure that TSR was among the most inclusive companies. The Seattle-based critics are simply ignorant. Is it better now? Of course it is. Both my daughters play. Was it because of Wizbro's actions? Was it because I ran cool games? Not at all. My daughters loved Lord of the Rings, Legolas. Okay. Who knows what key a new player is going to come up with? Or is going to, what new key is going to be stuck into them? Boy, my one eye is really red, isn't it? Who knows what, man, that looks bad, sorry. I know it's been itching like crazy. You never know the key that's going to open up an unexpected lock. You never know. You got to try a bunch of keys. And they like Legolas. Good. Then I would get them going in a game that was familiar to them, had a bunch of Little Earth, Middle Earth, Hobbit theme to it. And there you go. Natural opening. All right. Now, this is the one. Bingo! I'm disgusted at all the 5e refugees trying to add all the 5e stuff back to Shadow Dark that makes Shadow Dark so much better than 5e. I can't believe it. We played for decades with nothing but basic and expert rules. They, meaning Wizbro, including TSR, added stuff only to sell more books. Yes and no. I'll give you what I know about one when I was there. Greyhawk was indeed stuff that would not fit in the first 3 books. Gary and Don were limited to the printers they had that they could afford, the size of the book that they could afford to print, and had more stuff than would fit, so they had to pare it down. Greyhawk had the alternative combat system and many of the things that couldn't go. They literally would not fit. And it had some ideas that they had not been able to address. Now, Blackmore was put out to assuage Dave Arneson's ego because Gary had a book. And to be fair, and to be honest, Dave didn't write hardly any of it at all. I know, bad grammar. But he still got the same royalty Gary got on Greyhawk. Now, Advanced was an attempt, ill-fated and short-sighted by Brian Bloom and Gary Gygax, to find a system that they wouldn't have to pay Arneson any royalties on. We all know how that turned out. I can say that the supplements that followed, Eldritch Wizardry, Gods, Demigods, and Heroes, no, I don't remember them all now. Swords and Spells. I think there was another one. Those were published to add more on to the core of the game. We weren't doing them just to sell more books. In fact, Eldritch Wizardly nearly killed the brand because of the cover that I chose. And all the mom and pop hobby shops sending them back horrified. We can't put that on our shelves. And I mean, it was hardly even worth a glance today. It was very inoffensive then, but it was suggestive. And that one nearly killed the brand. So we weren't doing it just to make books. We actually felt that we were expanding the canon, one in the middle and one at the end. We were expanding the canon of the rules, not selling you more books. We were trying to put out, there it is, that's done. It's our final product. Here it is. 2E and everything that came afterwards, absolutely. The splat books, all that was just money grub. Without a doubt. Wizbro can't be happy with that because it doesn't lend itself to enough merchandise licensing. They need more monsters, new monsters, so they can sell them. Used to be so they get them sculpted and cast in metal. Now somebody writes an STL file, and you can cast them in resin. Absolutely, splat books are selling you more books. Now, you notice at the beginning of this answer, I said while I was there. Some of the stuff that came after, splat books, Oriental Adventures, and some of those, absolutely, they were there to keep product in the production line and to keep product going out to the stores, being sold, and profit coming back. Hey, that's business. That's commerce. That's capitalism. Do you really need, all the ballpoint pens that are available today if you walk into your Office Depot? No. But everybody thinks they've got a better one. Did I need a Curva pen? The one with the funny curved point? And I'll put this up against something there, see? It's supposed to make my arthritic hand feel better after writing with it? No. Does it work? I think so. I haven't used it enough. I didn't need it. But they came up with an idea that I found appealing, so I thought I'd try it. Well, splat books can be like that too. For people that can't work that stuff out themselves, okay, here's a manual, here's how I'll do it, and I'll copy it down, and I'll copy it, and this is how I'll do it. And there's nothing wrong with that. Nothing at all. But is it an effort to sell more stuff and make more money? Certainly. Good Lord. Think about Heinz and their ketchup. They've never had 57 varieties, but they've had a hell of a lot of varieties over the years. And they just found another one that sold well, and another one that sold well, and now Heinz sells all kinds of crap. Food, stuffs. Let's see. I think, yep, that's all I have. So, keep in mind, if I have no comments, I have no questions, you don't get to enjoy my smiling face and dulcet tones on Saturday morning while you eat your Wheaties. So, or whatever you choose to eat for breakfast on Saturday. Drink your Ovaltine. Boy, I got urged to drink Ovaltine so much growing up, and I never did like it. It's for people that didn't know what real chocolate really tasted like. Anyway, if you like Ovaltine, well, that's the way I feel. I guess that's it. Nothing earth-shaking coming out anytime soon. No marvelous kickstart, nothing that I would deem to be marvelous kickstarting. No new movies coming out that I'm aware of. So I guess it's time to say Dodata Govi. Hello, and welcome to my cellar.
He's the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs. Still quite a feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Last man around when them rates went down. Calling Gary in that Lake Geneva town. Hey Gary, it's an awful mess. Let me edit, we'll have success. D&D and Dragon Magazine. He's the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs, but he's still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Magic missile, it's a mortar shell. Make it hit in the first level spell. Brought psionics to the game to attack that wizard's brain. TSR and fantasy, collection of micro armory. Titan with Tramp under a tree, high as could be. He's the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs, but he's still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar.